I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. Randy Robinson here. And, you know, if you follow Life Outreach International at all, Life Today on the broadcast show, you have seen one of the outreaches that we have been doing for many, many years now is to stop human trafficking, to reach into areas and rescue girls and then restore them. Boys too, but it's primarily girls. And so this is an issue that is close to my heart. You know, I've got two daughters, and I've seen some things over in Southeast Asia that just break my heart. And, you know, the more we've gotten into this, the more we realize that this isn't just an over there problem. It's a global problem, you know, and now we've partnered with an organization right here in Dallas that's shutting down networks here in the United States. So there's a lot of work to be done, but there's a lot of progress, I think, being made, and raising awareness is very important in this area. And that's why I'm excited today to have someone on who is raising awareness with a beautiful, in a sense, a work of art, but she's telling the stories of some people through a documentary called The New Abolitionists. And the filmmaker behind that is Christina Zorich. And Christina is an actor, an acting coach, filmmaker, producer, director. And so we'll take a peek at the trailer for this documentary a little bit, but I'll give you a little background and introduce you to her. So if you're watching us live, you can jump in and be a part of the chat if you're on one of the chat-enabled channels. Otherwise, we do appreciate your comments. And as always, encourage you, once you hear from Christina, to check out this documentary and see what you can do to support at least the awareness part of it, maybe more. Christina, welcome to Life Today Live. Great to have you.
Oh, thank you so very much for having me.
So give us a little bit of background as to how you even got into this, and then we'll talk about some of the specifics in the film.
Well, I met an anti-trafficker in 2012 at a party in Hollywood. It was a Christmas party. Her name was Erica Grieve. She had started an NGO, which means non-government organization, called Unlikely Heroes, that built homes for rescued women and children. And I think they had just had a charter building that they had built, and they were moving to, at the time I met her, they were looking to go to the Philippines. And they had just come back from a trip to the Philippines, but they were looking to build a facility there. And she told me a few horror stories. And I thought I was well educated and sophisticated, and I was in shock. Time slowed down. She told me, I won't even go into this one horror story, but basically, all right, I'm going to. She went
Go ahead.
Well, because I think it's kind of assaulting. It's hard to forget when you hear something like this, but they had met with some officials. She didn't tell me exactly what their positions were. They wrote some kind of, paperwork that gave her permission to go into this underground brothel. She went in with some armed guards and pulled out 10 to 12-year-old girls, maybe 14. I can't remember. It was a while since she told me the original story. And then she just looked at me and said, I could have gotten out more, but they were so damaged and broken, they wouldn't come. Yeah. She kind of described horrible living conditions. And then she looked at me and she said, Christina, they knew. And, it didn't register. And I say this all the time to people, and it's the same for me. I think people think I'm like different, but it's not, because my brain doesn't want to absorb it. There's a part of us that doesn't want to believe that. And even though I've heard story after story, real life situation after situation, it's almost like our brain shuts down because we can't believe and don't want to believe it's true. So I realized, later what she meant. If they knew where it was, they could go in and get rid of it. They could have stopped it, but they didn't. So I just looked at her and I said, what can I do? How can I help? And I had her, sent her, at that point, I didn't think of myself as a filmmaker. I'd always wanted to direct, but I had never done anything at that point. I was an actress teaching acting at the time. And so I said to her, I'm going to send you cinematographers I know, directors who can be a part of this. And of course, we had a day, she met them all. And afterwards, she came up to me. She goes, they all ask for money, Christina. All the money we get has to go to the girls. And I said, I totally understand. But that's when I got the idea that if somebody is to make something in terms of fundraising materials, or if they decide, and that's when I got the idea for a documentary, this would be a good idea for a documentary, because if I don't know about what this looks like, and if I'm in the dark, I know there's other people out there that don't. And I also privately wanted at that point still to understand, how does this exist? How is this possible? How, I was shocked, and I still. So cut to a few years later, I sold some property, was sitting on more money than I had in a while back in New York, was going to self-produce a play. My mom was going to direct it. We had a New York producer, and I was on a prayer call with a prayer partner. And she said to me, I'm really getting that this is not the project for you to self-produce. And I was like, what? You don't understand. I really love this show. And she goes, I don't think this is it. She's like, remember, I keep getting remember how you were so upset about trafficking and you wanted to, I was like, yeah. She goes, I think you're supposed to. And so we kept praying it out, and that's what I did. And I started my journey.
If I can, and I didn't have a chance to ask you this beforehand, so, you say what you want, but I'm really curious how you ended up, in a prayer group, because, you come from a well-known acting family, and I'm just curious about your personal journey.
Yeah, I know. People say that. Well, my parents always were like, whatever faith you end up coming to, we support you. My father was a fallen Catholic. My mom was fallen Greek Orthodox. And when I say fallen, my parents were very interesting people, complicated people like most of us are, right? So my grandmother was very devout. We would always go to church on Easter's a big deal with Greek Orthodox families. So, and I have memories of I'm saying all this to say that even though they weren't practicing a faith, there was a theme of faith in both of their lives. Like there was a ethical belief system in aspects of who they are that was already there, firmly cemented. I'll never forget, I think Mother Teresa was on the cover of some magazine, and I said something kind of judgmental about her. And my mother was like, oh, you can't say that. She's a woman of faith. She's an incredible woman. So my mom had these moments, and I feel like I was a part of walking her in the sinner's prayer at the end of her life. God willing, both of them made it. I was definitely, one of the assignments I had, and was very aware of interceding for both of them. So I had interactions with Holy Spirit leading me and prompting me to lead them into prayer. Wow. But I was given this big open kind of birth as a child and growing up. And I think college, I took comparative religion courses, and I just ended up at the end of my rope in the end of my 20s. I was an actress in New York City, but I remember sitting on the floor crying, just knowing I kind of had come to the end of myself. And I very soon after that ran into a young man, and he witnessed to me and took me to a Pentecostal church in Harlem, Bethel Gospel Assembly, and I got saved there and baptized there. And then that was it. I felt like that was all God. I see him now looking back in time, how he set that all up.
Yeah. Well, you use the phrase, God willing, they made it. It is God's will. And I think you know that. It's God's will that none should perish. And so for those who don't know, I will just say her mother is Olympia Dukakis, who Academy Award winning, Golden Globe, just a giant of an actor. And so that's encouraging. I love that. So blessings on you and your family.
Thank you.
So I think this would be a good time to take a look at the trailer for the film so people can get a good sense, and then we'll come back and we'll talk through some of the stories and some of the things you've learned, because this has been a long journey, not just in the filmmaking, but you've kind of become a de facto expert in this area.
I know, it's crazy.
Right. So do you need to set this up, or do you just think we should roll it?
Yeah, just roll it.
Okay. This is the trailer for The New Abolitionists. I'll put the URL up. The New Abolitionists documentary.com is the website where you can check this out. And is it out yet, or is this?
Well, for privacy, I think the trailer might be on YouTube. Again, as I was speaking to you before, shooting, being live on the air, I have to be so quiet and careful about what we put out there. I can't remember if the trailer is actually on YouTube.
Yeah, the trailer's on YouTube. I just didn't know if the full documentary was on the website yet.
No, it's on streaming, cable, satellite.
Okay.
We had our streaming release April 11th, so it's out there.
Okay. Yeah. So all the information is on the website. All right. Let's take a look at the trailer, and then we'll talk a little bit about The New Abolitionists.
Sex slavery conjures up images in our mind of people locked up, chained to beds. There's a lot of other ways people can be in bondage.
You see a lot of this. How do you process it emotionally?
It's horrible. I don't know that you ever get used to it. I don't know that you ever get to the point where you don't just weep inside over the atrocity.
We want to bring hope and healing to the women that are in the sex industry.
The ways that we can overcome trauma is to talk about it.
We call forth their identity, who they really are, and we see the beauty in them.
ទោះគេធ្វើអ្វីមកយើងក៏យើងទ្រាំអត់ធ្មត់នឹងគេយើងចេះរក្សាដូចថារក្សាចិត្តខ្លួនឯងអញ្ចឹងកុំឲ្យទៅគេរករឿងគេអញ្ចឹង
My editor did a good job with that.
yeah, it's good. So I've been to some of these places. I've been on the streets. I've been in the brothels. We've gone in with hidden cameras. I've interviewed girls that have been rescued. I've heard their stories, and it's heartbreaking. How many times did you cry making this?
I mean, I had one time when I went in 2015 and worked with another editor, and I had a week where I said, we're off the clock. I can't do this. I just needed to process because, and then back in 2016, when I made my second trip and I worked with assistant editors and then with my editor, the longest chunk of time, Landon, who edited the trailer. I thought he did a beautiful job. But we had the first time we saw the interviews translated because, when we were there, we had a translator, but we didn't get really, I was just getting fragments of what they were saying enough to be able to ask the next question. So I really wasn't absorbing fully what they were saying. Even some of the footage we got on the streets, I didn't know what was being said there. So I think I was just leveled. And, you guys are seeing an hour and 38 minutes, hopefully, of the documentary, but I came back with 600 hours of footage. So if everybody absorbed all that footage, it would probably be too much for all of us, Yeah. I mean, I had to, so even in the construction, there were some stories, it was so hard to cut out, but I just went, I had to eventually just remember the audience needs to be loved into this subject because I had seen films and read books or certain, in my research phase that overwhelmed me.
Yeah.
And one book I read, which really started my journey, written by Patricia King, For His Tears, They Died, was little accounts of boys and girls that had been trafficked. I threw the book across the room and I was a mess for a week. I couldn't function. So I went through a really difficult process. And I think that's the part of this subject matter that is actually bad in a way, because people can't, it immobilizes people. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh,
so what I like about this, us being online, is you can pause and you can walk away and you don't have to watch the film, if you're buying it, which I think is a better way to watch it. But if you can't, you rent it, but you don't have to watch it in one sitting. I don't think you should, because you're getting different pieces of information. It's really educational, and the purpose of it is to educate and activate all of us to be more aware, to combat this, to understand really what it is. Yeah,
and that brings up, I think, a good question, because it's one thing to sit and watch this, and it's a good thing to educate yourself. But then what do you do? What does the average person do? What can they even do, especially when you're talking halfway around the world?
Yeah, well, that's why I've really, in this phase of, the process with the film, I really wanted to make, and this is not just like and share, please, but I wanted our social media to be a resource, to function as a resource, as well as the website. So we have at www.thenewabolitionistdoc.com, we have a where to watch page, all the different platforms like Apple TV or Amazon Prime or DirecTV, all the places you can watch. Then there's also a what can I do page, and all the people I've met on the journey, the groups that are featured in the film are there. So if you click on those links, you can immediately go to all their resources. As Andrea used to say, you can pray, you can go on a missions trip, you can support a family, a child, in terms of getting education, in feeding them, any of the projects they're doing individually as a ministry. They have like a border, they have a lighthouse, like just different many kind of organizational aspects of their their ministry where they're involved. And so you can do that. You can do a profit for purpose business connected to anti-trafficking. Like a friend of mine started a coffee company, and a portion of the proceeds go to anti-trafficking groups. There was a man featured in the film. I mean, I don't remember how much we talk about who he is, but he opened up a jean business, and the girls were being trained to do at a living wage, at a really a well living wage. Of course, you don't want to support any kind of other, but so that they can develop skills and try out this vocation for themselves. So there's also any kind of creative idea you might have. I think I was interviewing this wonderful woman on a podcast. She's like, I bought the movie and I'm going to screen it for all my friends. And we're going to brainstorm about what we can do, because I started opening up with her about what trafficking looks like in the States, because I met at a film festival that the film was shown live at. I met a PBS producer who was making a documentary about trafficking in the States. He asked me to be a host on it. So I've learned so much about that. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of ways you can get involved. Look at what happened with me. I say to people, it didn't happen like that. I don't think you spend your money at this time in our global history frivolously. I think you should sit on something, pray about it, pray with your prayer partners, before you get involved with something, so that you know that you're doing something that's within his purpose for you. Yeah. Because it's not everybody's cup of tea to do this. Maybe they're called another way. But if you feel a call and a tug on your heart, I would sit with it in prayer till it formulates for you. This documentary became clear to me, and purposefully an assignment that I was on. There's no way anyone in their right mind would do this if that wasn't the case, frankly.
Right. Yeah, Right. It's a tough one. And just filmmaking in general is tough, but now you're talking location shooting and people not wanting to really give you attention because of the subject matter. So I applaud your work for it. Now, here, at Life Today, we are an openly Christian organization. We look for Christians in country to partner with. We end up working oftentimes across whatever spectrum, because sometimes you just got to address the need, and we won't refuse to work with anybody. But there is, it's important to me that we address the spiritual, and especially when you're talking about a human trafficking situation. So like at our Life Center in Southeast Asia, yes, we want to give them practical skills, but we also want to share the gospel with them because we know they need healing because they've been abused horribly. What's your view on the role of faith in addressing this issue, as far as both in combating the evil, but in restoring the people? And well, I'll save one more question for you after that. I'll let you respond to that.
Well, I find the gospel subversive. I find Jesus subversive in this moving, I'll get emotional, powerful way. So I think that he didn't let the left hand know what the right hand was doing. He was always the smartest guy in the room, So I look at our faith and him as the model. And so I think what's really important with issues like this, again, because it's a very triggering and emotional thing, it's like anything. If I get really upset, I've gotten to the point, I didn't do this in my 20s, where I sit on that feeling. I don't take action out of it because I know that I'm going to be doing something from a place of like irritability or hotness, right? So it's always smarter to use wisdom and to sit on it so that you can be more intentional. And I feel it's the same with how these groups are handling their place, Some people, they will introduce it as, all of them have to introduce it because, they're all on visas. So they have to introduce it as an option. But they're all praying nonstop privately for these women and the children. All of them are. And I felt that constantly. I would be in situations where I pray in tongues under my breath or praying over it. And I don't know how people walk the earth anymore without that. I need it to just sustenance to keep me in the world as it is right now. Mm-hmm. So I just think you have to use the wisdom that you're getting moment to moment, being led to do, because some situations it's not wise. Other situations you're doing it privately. Other situations there's an opening. And the first person ever witnessed to me, William Hammond, he said Jesus is a gentleman. He doesn't force himself on anyone. Mm-hmm. So I just think and even when we featured the transgender person at the end in the film, it was so moving to me because he talks about Holy Spirit, that private sanctification process, and it really revolutionized my looking at how God will move on people in these circumstances and how real he really is, even to me. And I've been saved since I was 30, he really did a huge inside job cleanup on this transgender individual. And it wasn't from people pushing, the pushing actually alienated him. And sometimes they did it in a kind of inappropriate, ugly way. It was a private experience he had. And I was like, as my friend used to say to me, I'm not Holy Ghost Junior. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not supposed, we have our purpose, but we don't have to take all of that on. And guess what? It makes it less overwhelming when you think about that. Gosh, it's really God's job to transform them completely. We just have to make sure we're doing what he wants at that time with them.
Yeah. So here's the other part of that question when you get out and you're dealing in areas where the trafficking is going on. And this was a hard one for me personally. Have you... Okay, like I said earlier, I know, right? The traffickers, the ones doing it, and it's not just men. I was shocked at how many women we're pushing young girls on to me as an American in a foreign land. That the assumption is there, but we need to reach the traffickers too. And
listen, I was just talking to the guy who's the host of the trafficking film that I was telling you about in the States called Knock. Mm-hmm. We shot a sizzle reel for it. I interviewed a bunch of intelligence officers, ex-traffic victims. One little girl was, now she's grown up, was trafficked out of her mother's basement in Kansas and ended up in a trafficking ring in Montana and escaped by digging a chip out of her arm. So this is happening all over the United States. Jeez. Every state, has individual, what they call freelancers who just do it to make, and then smaller rings. And then there's larger cartels that are working with things. What was the question? I went off topic,
the traffickers. How do we reach and redeem the traffickers?
Reason I brought this up is the documentary they're trying to come up with finishing funds for. They follow this pastor in Oregon, who has a ministry working with the traffickers.
Oh, wow.
And he's gotten involved in working from that angle with the men, the Johns, and the traffickers, which is a incredibly, I think for anybody, you have to go through an experience of kind of being really angry and disgusted and upset, because that's part of the process, right? My first trip, that's how I felt. I saw the Johns and I was revolted and disgusted. You could feel kind of all of it on them when you saw them in the streets. And then the second time, I felt it, but you just feel so sorry for them, not like merciful, like this is wrong, this is not wrong. Of course, that never goes away, that disgust with that. But it changed a little, and Annie said something really smart in the film. She goes, you can't love and hate at the same time. And you can't. If you're there to be a facility for the change, if you're living in that place of hate, that can spin you out. But when you come from love, you see how broken and messed up they are. Psychologically, a lot of them are mentally not well. They're in a sex addiction. This is the only life they've ever known. I can go into all kinds of descriptions, which, I try really hard in the film to kind of humanize the experience of what kind of trauma happens across the boards to everyone involved in this. It can be a regional trauma, personal trauma in the family, poverty, abuse in the family, addiction, any kind of war like this. A lot of trafficking is happening in the Mideast right now. There's a good documentary called Naturno that talks about it. Beautiful documentary I saw years ago. So it's important for people to kind of absorb slowly and allow themselves that process, But if you want to donate to a film, Knock is the name of it. I can get resources up on my website, but it basically works with the traffickers and the Johns. Yeah.
We're promoting your film today.
Yeah.
And by the way,
that's right. See the new Abolitionists. Please watch it on Apple TV, Amazon Prime.
That's exactly right.
And leave reviews. Rate us. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's good. I wanted to cover all that. And I will say though, since we're going a little outside the lines here, The Sound of Freedom with Jim Caviezel, which is coming out this fall, incredible film, beautiful film. The director on it, I'm a huge fan, Alejandro Monteverde. But anyway, now you can't see that one yet. Now you can go see the new Abolitionists, and this is the website. And is there anything we missed, Christina? I want to give you the last word, but I want people to go check this out and tell people about it. Just talk about it. Post about it, like all the things you said. But last word to you.
Get involved in a local level. Talk about it. I mean, the first time I heard about it was in 2016. Hillary Clinton talked about it at the convention. And I think this is really important. At this time we're in right now, so much of stuff gets politicized, red, blue. This is an issue. I've not met one person on either side of the aisle that isn't unified. And I really want us to get back to a place of solving problems together, really solving problems. If anyone thinks the other side doesn't care, I promise you they do. And this is something we can solve together. It's solvable. So don't, take heart, get educated, honor your process, and God will reveal to you where your part is that you're supposed to play in this.
Yeah, good word. And you're so right. There should be no division over whether we should do something about this.
Yeah, it's insane. It's ridiculous that people think that, to me, is actually not really what's happening once you're involved in it. It's not how people see it. They might be, as you and I said, apathetic and overwhelmed on either side of the aisle. But that doesn't mean, just like the audience might feel this way, but that doesn't mean that they don't believe it's wrong and we need to deal with it.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Christina. Appreciate your
time.
Thank
you for having me.
Appreciate your talent and your effort and giving so much of your life to this. This is a big thing. So thank you.
7 years, 7 years.
All right. Well, hey, all you guys out there watching, let's make it worth her time. Go to the new abolitionistdoc.com. You can find out where you can watch the full thing and let people know about it. And let's talk about it so we can do something about it. We'll come back. We've got more for you here on Life Today Live. We'll see you again next time.
But enjoy it. Squeeze all the fun you can out of it. This is your hour. Because it's soon going to end. And truth will be on the throne for a day. Sunday is coming.